night, I spent a lot of time going through one story after another about potential corruption, or very real corruption, I should say, in the Trump administration in some detail. But guess what? Because today is a day that ends in Y, we've got so much more to talk about. And this particular story centers around a specific conflict of interest that just a few years ago made right-wingers nearly foam at the mouth. Because this is a story about potential corruption involving a president's sons.
They have been 100% silent when it comes to this current president's son.
I mean, this is the president's son. Can you give me a bigger conflict of interest? No.
That is what creates this conflict of interest.
Why was this potential conflict of interest ignored?
Nothing but conflict of interest when you're taking money from foreign oligarchs.
So are we shocked that the president's son is getting special treatment?
This is about him peddling influence from being the president's son.
Whose son actually did profit off of his dad's government service.
Tried to profit off his dad's political career.
Profiting off his father's diplomacy.
Profit off his father's position.
Profiting off his father's name, and everybody is covering it.
There's vulnerability for bribery there.
And by the way, did I tell you his son has no experience, nothing really to offer?
I hope that they make him accountable. It doesn't matter if you're the president's son.
Why are they protecting the president's son?
Man, I love the video archives, don't you? Back when Joe Biden was in office, every MAGA talking head was obsessed with the idea that the son of a president might be profiting off of the presidency. They were shocked. They were incensed. They were pearl clutching till they broke those pearls. They demanded accountability for the president's son making money off his father's position. And guys, it wasn't even just right-wing pundits who were absolutely obsessed with that story. Trust me here.
We now know that Hunter Biden is going to be able to meet with prospective buyers at 2 art shows where his paintings are going to be on display later this year.
So does this White House not have any concerns about the photos that have emerged showing Hunter Biden at that gallery alongside prospective buyers?
Okay, on another topic, was it common for President Biden to do favors for Hunter Biden's international business partners? On another topic, a lot of stories about Hunter Biden surfacing this week.
And Hunter Biden's book is out this week.
Okay, and I have a question on Hunter Biden's artwork.
Now, let's fast forward to today, shall we?
The company just secured a $24 million contract with the Pentagon for its Phantom robot to begin tests with the Marine Corps and help troops breach enemy sites more safely. Joining us now is Foundation Future Industries founder and CEO Sankat Patak and the company's chief strategy advisor, Eric Trump, President Trump's son.
That's right. In the middle of a war that the president started, his adult son is the chief strategy advisor of a company that just so happens to be winning multi-million-dollar Pentagon contracts. And it is not just that one humanoid robot company that has managed to score a Pentagon contract either. Last year, the venture capital firm of Trump's other adult son, Don Jr., invested in a new 3D printed rocket propellant startup. And 8 months later, that company, partially owned by the president's son, landed a nearly $5 million contract with the U.S. Air Force. Imagine that. Now, a spokesperson for Don Jr.'s company, of course, denied that their proximity to power represented a conflict, saying the company maximizes transparency and compliance, even though no one at the fund has ever worked in government. And I just have to pause there, because that is quite the interesting, and I would note, quite specific denial. Because while no one at the fund may have technically ever worked in government, Don Jr. helped screen candidates for top jobs at the Pentagon on behalf of his father, the commander-in-chief, after the election. And we know that because Don Jr. even bragged on his podcast about his role in that process during the transition. He specifically mentioned that for whatever reason, he seemed to be screening candidates based on their interest in drones.
During transition, you're going through, you're interviewing some of these guys. Who's going to be, Secretary of the Air Force or whatever. This one was particularly germane because it was like, everyone was like, old F-15 pilot, and that's incredible. But, they sort of want to go with what they know, which is we're fighter pilots. But, are they better served with a drone that costs, a tiny fraction of that of a plane?
So can you guess? You probably can. What business Don Jr. and Eric Trump just so happen to be heavily invested in? And if you guessed drones, ding, 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 you're correct. Both Don Jr. and Eric Trump are heavily invested in drone companies. Last year, a drone company called Unusual Machines gave Don Jr. 200,000 shares of its stock in exchange for his help as an advisor. And while company officials and Pentagon officials and Don Jr. himself have all said that Don Jr. has not reached out to the Defense Department about that company, the company has seen some notable success since they brought Don Jr. on. See, after that help from Don Jr. screening candidates for top jobs at the Pentagon, Trump ended up picking Dan Driscoll as his Army secretary. And Dan Driscoll just so happens to have promised to revamp contracting efforts to speed up Pentagon purchases of, you guessed it, drones. And last year, while giving a speech to Army leaders and industry executives, Driscoll actually showed off a drone that the Army built using parts from the company Don Jr. is an investor in. He told the company, quote, across the Army, we will equip soldiers with these kinds of expendable drones. Now, that same day, the Army's 101st Airborne Division announced it intended to buy 300,500 drone engines from that company. It was the first major direct order the company had ever gotten from the Pentagon. And the company's stock jumped a whole 8% that day. Now, as eye-popping as all of that is, everything I have mentioned so far is just chump change compared to what might be coming. You see, last month, yet another drone company, one backed by both Don Jr. and Eric Trump, did what is called a reverse merger, basically merging with a golf course company that, of course, was also backed by the Trumps. And the reverse merger will mean that the new drone company, which was only formed last year, by the way, will be able to expedite its path to becoming a publicly traded company because the golf course holding company was already listed on the stock exchange, so it expedites the whole process. Remember what happened to that other drone company Don Jr. was invested in when the Pentagon announced it was going to buy 3,500 drone engines from them? Well, this new company is specifically targeting Pentagon sales. And oh boy, are they in luck. Because this week, the Pentagon released its budget request for the upcoming year. And the Pentagon is requesting $74 billion for investment in drone and counter-drone technologies. And just to put that in perspective, that number in perspective, that is triple what the Pentagon spent last year on the very same thing. It is the largest investment ever in the drone industry. What a lucky time to be heavily invested in the drone industry. How would they have predicted that? And this new drone company that Don Jr. and Eric are a part of isn't just looking to sell its wares to the Pentagon. Earlier this month, the Associated Press reported that the company was also making sales pitches to several countries in the Gulf, so they could defend themselves in the war that Don Jr. and Eric Trump's dad started. Now, that company also denies there is any conflict of interest in having Don Jr. and Eric on board. And Eric Trump defended the investment by saying that drones are clearly the wave of the future. Now, while the rest of the country is struggling with higher gas prices and rising costs and are worried about sending their loved ones into what could be another forever war, the Trump family appears to be profiting from the war and in really no rush to end it.
What do you say to the American people who question how much longer this will take? Obviously, you know that they are having higher...
You're such a disgrace. Did you hear what I just said? Vietnam. How many years was Vietnam?
In case you're wondering, and you probably know this, but it depends on how you count it, but the U.S. military's direct involvement in Vietnam lasted at least 8 years. So for the sake of the more than 50,000 U.S. troops in the region this very moment, I hope this war is nowhere near that long. I think we all do. Which brings me to the other major potential grift the Trump family appears to be using this war for. Because Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is still somehow one of Trump's top negotiators trying to end this war. Well, at the same time, the New York Times reports that Jared is trying to raise $5 billion more from Gulf nations for his investment firm. Now, I should note that the firm says it does not intend to take in any additional capital while Jared is volunteering for the government, though I would note no restrictions are mentioned for lining up capital for when he leaves. And as for the White House, they say that Kushner only acts in the best interest of the American public. But the thing is, they generally have definitely a different definition of what is in the best interest of the American people than you and I do. So there's that. Now, when the person making major decisions on behalf of the U.S. government is also in a position to profit off of those decisions, that's obviously a huge problem. As the ranking member on the House Judiciary Committee, Jamie Raskin, put it in a recent letter demanding answers from Kushner, Kushner's decision to act in these two roles, one public for the government and one private for personal profit, creates a glaring and incurable conflict of interest. Raskin asked Kushner directly about his negotiations with Iran, asking, are you representing 100% the interests of your business partners in Saudi Arabia and other Gulf oil autocracies, or are you representing 100% the interests of the American people? Or is it a 50-50 split that you apportion in your loyalties between your official and corporate clients? To whom do your professional obligations and fiduciary duties belong? And those are all excellent questions. And joining me now is the person who asked them, Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland. He's the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee. There's so much to ask you about. I just want to start just by getting your reaction to the sheer shamelessness of what we saw today. Eric Trump on Fox News bragging about a new Pentagon contract. What went through your head when you saw that?
It's jaw-dropping that it's so brazen and out in the open in the daylight, but Trump essentially wants to move us into an Orban or Putin or Xi type government. I mean, you can call it state capitalism or you can call it state socialism. It almost doesn't make any difference. It has nothing to do with free markets and honest contracting. Basically, the idea is the guy who's the lead autocrat who runs the government gets his family and his close friends and business associates all the government contracts and gets them all wealthy. And, you know, I have a Republican colleague who told me he was at the White House and was told by someone from the Trump family, we are going to be the richest family on earth when this administration's over.
Yeah, they're heading toward that. I mean, the last number we saw was $1.4 billion. Let's see where we are soon. It wasn't that long ago, and I just tried to play a bunch of this, remind people, I think everybody remembers this, when Fox News and a lot of the MAGA talking heads were so concerned, so outraged with how they saw a president's adult child could benefit from their father's office. And of course, I'm talking about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. Now it's a whole different level wackadoo story. That hypocrisy obviously isn't lost on me. I kind of lived it. But I wonder what you make of it.
Well, they never even charged that Hunter Biden had any government contract in the United States. Right. They never charged that he had a government contract with a foreign government. And this is routine business in Trump land now. They don't even bother to deny it. They brag about it. Between they do. And so, you know, the Foreign Government Emoluments Clause, I know it sounds quaint to cite the Constitution in this context, but Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution says that nobody in federal office, including the president, shall receive a present, an emolument, which means a payment, an office, or a title of any kind whatever from a king, a prince, or a foreign state without the consent, the approval of Congress. And Donald Trump has not once come to Congress. What they did in the first administration was like ma and pa brick and mortar stuff. We'll collect millions and millions of dollars in the Trump hotels in D.C. and New York, the golf courses. But now they've moved into the digital era. And so they've moved into crypto. So there are hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars flowing in from foreign states and private entities closely aligned with foreign governments. And they're doing the drone defense contracting here. And, you know, the Trump family's getting rich off of defense contractors, military contracting, and foreign governments that are all involved in this war, which is why I posed to Mr. Kushner the question, when you're over there negotiating on the Iran war, are you negotiating to keep it going, or are you negotiating to end it? Because you're getting rich off of it.
And where are your loyalties? I love how you pose the 50%, 50%. As I said earlier, and you just alluded to it too, I mean, this is...
What makes this situation so unsettling isn't just the allegation of conflict of interest, it's how normalized it appears to have become. Not long ago, the mere suggestion that a president's family member might financially benefit from political proximity triggered outrage across the political spectrum. Now, similar concerns seem to be met with shrugs, denials, or carefully worded technicalities. At the center of this issue is a deeper question about power and access. When family members of a sitting president are involved in industries that directly intersect with government spending, especially something as massive as defense contracting, it raises unavoidable doubts. Even if no explicit rules are broken, the overlap between influence and profit creates a perception problem that is hard to ignore. And perception, in politics, often matters as much as reality. The timing only intensifies those concerns. As military spending on emerging technologies like drones surges, so too do the business interests tied to those same sectors. That alignment might be coincidental, but it doesn't feel accidental. When policy decisions and private investments appear to move in parallel, people begin to question whether strategy is being driven by national interest or personal gain. What's particularly striking is the contrast between past rhetoric and present behavior. The same voices that once demanded relentless scrutiny now seem far less eager to apply the same standard. That inconsistency feeds a broader cynicism, that accountability is selective depending on who holds power, and once that belief takes hold, it erodes trust not just in individuals but in institutions as a whole. Meanwhile, the public is left dealing with the consequences of decisions they have little visibility into. Rising costs, geopolitical instability, and the possibility of a prolonged conflict are not abstract concerns. They shape everyday life. Against that backdrop, any hint that those in power or close to it might be benefiting financially feels especially jarring. This isn't just about one family or one administration, it's about the boundaries between public service and private interest. If those lines blur too much, governance starts to resemble something else entirely, less about representation, more about opportunity. And that's the real risk here, not just potential corruption, but the quiet acceptance of it. Because once that acceptance sets in, the standard doesn't just drop for one moment, it drops for everything that follows.